Julie Koerber with Yellowstone Valley Woman Magazine, now here with us in studio. Julie, this is good, hard-hitting stuff in this latest magazine here.
Oh, thank you so much, Aaron. It was kind of a labor of love for us. I think it was one of those things that, when you're out and about and you hear stories from people in the community who are kind of entrenched in this fight, and they tell you these just gripping stories about the 12-year-old who was rescued from a truck stop human trafficking ring, or the 11-year-old who was kidnapped with her mother, and the first thing that they did to this couple of women was put breast implants in them so that they could then traffic them. When you hear stories like that, you think, oh my gosh, what can we do as a community to save women just like this? And frankly, telling these kinds of stories, talking to these people that are in the trenches, and really letting our community know they just need to keep their eyes open, because these women are right in front of every single one of us. They're at the grocery store, they're at the nail salon, because they still get all the stuff that you and I do, but they're under the thumb of their trafficker every step of the way. So
the main piece here, it's titled "The High Price Faces on the Front Lines in the Battle Against Human Trafficking," and one of the ladies that you interview here is Georgia Cady with the Tumbleweed program here in Billings. So I want to hear more about what Tumbleweed does and how they help with this problem. But this was the quote that stood out to me from Georgia Cady, talking about human trafficking, because we've known that the I-90 corridor has a human trafficking problem, that we have this problem even here in Montana. But we kind of assumed that, well, maybe the victims of this are being imported and trafficked in from elsewhere, which is bad enough on its own. It doesn't matter where these victims come from. It's a problem. We want to go after it. But what she said is that we are not unique in Montana. The victims don't come from somewhere else. They're from right here. Our kids and the people doing the trafficking are here. The most vulnerable seem to be runaways, homeless kids, children in the foster care system, and victims of trauma. So what she's saying is, no, Montana kids, Montana women are the victims of human trafficking. It's not just an import coming in from elsewhere.
That's right. And, one of the things that we had heard when we were doing this research for the story was within 48 hours of a child hitting the streets, whether that be a runaway or a homeless teen, a trafficker approaches them within 48 hours. And so I think that's what makes the work of Tumbleweed so critical, because, they're the safety net for those kids, with their shelter and their outreach programs. They are the safety net. So I think that's, if you're wondering, like, what can I do? Support these programs that are that key line of defense for kids, so that they don't have to make the choice, or they don't get caught up in the wrong crowd and end up in that world. Because, they say that a girl will try to leave her trafficker 5 times before she's successful. So, and that's even if she tries 5 times. Sometimes they just give up in their weakness.
And I know one of your previous cover stories for the Yellowstone Valley Woman Magazine was actually a young woman from, right here in Billings, I think out of Lockwood, who just has an incredible story, and we enjoyed talking with her. But, she had to run away from home. So she was basically the population, the vulnerable population that could be subject to this type of exploitation, but luckily found these types of resources, found these programs, got the help that she needed. But it said in 2018, Tumbleweed identified about 85 young people who are victims of sexual exploitation. But they're saying that the number may be even higher, because, of course, stories of sexual trauma and victimization aren't usually something that young people want to share. There was just so much in this story that stood out to me here. In fact, I think we've got Georgia Cady here with us now in studio. Georgia, great to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've been talking with Julie Koerber here about this latest cover story here in the Yellowstone Valley Woman Magazine, and it is just hard hitting from start to finish. Tell us what you do at Tumbleweed and how human trafficking really is a problem right here in our own backyard.
Excuse me. At Tumbleweed, I'm the Human Trafficking Program Manager. I started the program from its inception 3 years ago. We originally started to be outreach and do community education, but what we find was victims and clients were coming through our doors. So our focus has really shifted a lot more toward victim services. Currently, in the last about 3.5 years, I have approximately 89 victims of sex and labor trafficking on my caseload that are under the age of 25.
Wow.
Those are 98% Montana folks trafficked by Montana people.
And kids mostly in and from the Billings area, or even from rural Montana, all over the map? What do you see?
The kids that we're seeing the most are from central and eastern Montana, because that's kind of where the homeless youth, Billings is kind of where that particular area of homeless youth congregate.
Yeah. Yeah, and so what do you do? So you come across, let's just say a young woman in this instance who you know now she's a victim of human trafficking, maybe even sexual exploitation. What do you do? What can you do?
So a lot of people think that it looks like the Lifetime movie. For us at Tumbleweed, that's not what it looks like. The type of trafficking that we see are young women and young men trading sex for something of value or to get a real basic need met, like something to eat, a place to stay. So our job is really to try to reduce that vulnerability of those youth so that they don't have to make that tough choice just to get a real basic need met.
Yeah. It was described here, and I can't remember if this was by Brandon Walter, the FBI special agent, who's also helping to go after these human traffickers, or maybe it was a quote by you, Georgia, but there was a line in here that also stood out to me about how these young victims of human trafficking, they don't think of themselves as victims, they think of themselves as survivors. Was that from you, or was that from Brandon Walter? I can't remember, but either way, how hard is it to, in some instances, pull these kids out of those situations?
So what we know is that most of the youth that are homeless have suffered some type of trauma. And so to become a victim of trafficking is just kind of another link in the chain of the different traumas that they've suffered. And it's kind of a result of those traumas. So at some point, I tell often in my presentations a story of young folks that maybe their entire life they've been sexually abused by an uncle, a dad's friend. And so when they make the decision to get out of that home, they oftentimes feel like they're making the decision to be trafficked because at least they have some say in who is trafficking them or what they're doing with their person.
Yeah. And Tumbleweed, so what are the resources that you guys bring to the table to help out these kids then?
So Tumbleweed, under our trafficking program, we offer a comprehensive case management, which includes everything from, and we really meet folks where they're at. We're trauma-informed, we're youth-centric. So some youth just want a bottle of water and someone to talk to. Others want housing. So we run the gamut of services from mental health, physical health, housing, anything that victim needs, we try to address that need or refer that need out if we're not able to do it in-house.
Yeah, and this story here in the Yellowstone Valley Woman Magazine was written by Laura Bailey with photography by Daniel Sullivan. Great piece all around. That quote, was by Brandon Walter, the FBI special agent, cracking down on human trafficking here in Montana. He said the problem we have is that most victims, even juveniles, don't perceive themselves as victims. They see themselves as survivors. Julie Koerber, who's got the Yellowstone Valley Woman Magazine, he talked in here too about Montana being called the truck stop state in sex trafficking circles. What stood out to you in all of this a great series of reporting here?
Well, along that line, what stood out to me is that, they do say that this is the crime that's done in plain sight. And just to think that as you and I sleep in our comfortable beds, there are kids who are going up and down that I-90 corridor all night long. And so it's really hard. I know that Brittany and Sammy Higgs, who have the safe house in town for trafficked women, said, how can we not pay attention to something that is going on right in our backyard? And I just felt that conviction. And I hope, it is our hope that people pick up the magazine, read the stories, and see the connection right here in our own community and pay attention, because it's so easy for us all in our day-to-day lives to just kind of look the other way, and that's really not happening here. And I hate to be too preachy.
No, this is good. Well,
but
go ahead.
No, but I think it is. It's just tragic just to think.
You mentioned Sammy and Brittany Higgs, and they've got apparently a shelter for victims of human trafficking as well. And this is part of the HER campaign that I think folks have been hearing a lot about here in Billings. But yeah, I didn't realize this. She actually ended up going to Mosul, Iraq, and helping human trafficking victims there. So took experience that she has on the ground in Iraq back here to Billings, Montana. That's pretty incredible too.
Yeah, and I think it just speaks volumes to those dots that are created in your life, and when you can connect them and see, what this is all for, because obviously that paved the way for this really important quote-unquote ministry that's happening here in Billings. I mean, if she hadn't gone on that documentary crew and seen firsthand, the vulnerability overseas, she wouldn't have realized that there were things that she could investigate in her own community. And what I thought was really telling is it's just, she found some documents after her grandfather passed away. And that had been one of his life dreams, was to open a house of refuge. He never really spelled out what the point was of his refuge house, who he was going to serve. But obviously a servant's heart runs in that family, and what a blessing it is to our community.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I know they're tapped into shelters elsewhere all across Montana, too. Georgia, Cady, with Tumbleweed, what kind of help do you need from the community right now? I know obviously financial resources are always key, and then you can put those resources where they need to go. What other kind of help can the public provide?
Certainly financial resources, because it takes a lot of manpower to provide comprehensive case management. But Tumbleweed offers food assistance, clothing assistance, those type of needs that are real tangible. If people are wanting to donate those types of things, right now Tumbleweed is in a need for some bus passes to help folks that we're working with be able to get to appointments and to their jobs. And
sure,
give us an idea, how much is a bus pass?
I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I think a monthly pass is like $29.
Oh, okay, so not bad at all.
So Aaron, you and I will put in for a bus pass, right?
There we go. We'll
donate
Let's do
bus
it.
passes
All right,
today.
Two bus passes right there. There we go. All right. Well, this is anyway. Check this out. You'll see the Yellowstone Valley Woman Magazine. I found it at my gym. You can find it at coffee shops all over town. Check it out. This is hard-hitting journalism in here, and some great feature stories along the way as well. Georgia, Cady, thanks for all you do with Tumbleweed. Julie Koerber, thanks for what you're doing with the Yellowstone Valley Woman Magazine. Great to have both of you here in studio with us.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you.